Good morning and welcome back to it, the Now Morning Show, your Tuesday edition, where we are going to be talking about preparedness in dealing with the blind and visually impaired as Shamla explores this on Unique, Not Different.
Good morning, guys, and welcome to Unique, Not Different with me, Shamla. Today, I have the manager of the Welfare Rehabilitation Unit of the Trinidad and Tobago Blind Welfare Association. I continue the topic of the protective services and national security preparedness in dealing with persons who are blind, persons with disabilities in general. And the reason why I'm doing this is because eventually I want somebody from national security to appear on my segment to see from their perspective how ready they are in terms of dealing with victims, as well as, the other side of person with disabilities and if they are prepared in general. So as I mentioned, I have Mr. Lakan Sibasat, who is the manager at the Trinidad and Tobago Blind Welfare Association. So good morning, Mr. Sibasat. How are you doing?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, viewers. I'm doing very well, Shamla. Nice to hear your voice again.
Thank you. And okay, so let's get straight into it, right? Broadly, do you think that the protective services in the different authorities are equipped to deal with persons who are blind and visually impaired?
In a general sense, I'll say no, they are not. And they say in a broad sense and in the protective services, but the protective services is such a wide arm.
Yeah.
And if I were to focus in on to just the police service, where to protect and serve persons who are blind and visually impaired, we have had this conversation over and over and over about when a policeman or policewoman comes to you as a person who is blind, how can we identify that they are a policeman or woman? Somebody who could see the uniform or see their badge. Somebody who is blind, we just have to take it for granted that this is really a policeman or woman. And I had done some inquiries on that, and I was told that a citizen is not allowed to touch the police badge, but they are allowed to view it, read it while it's on display. So the police officer can display to you, but you are not allowed to touch it. And that leaves us in a big gap because nowadays you have a lot of impersonation of policemen and women all over the place. And somebody comes to us and claim that they are a policeman or policewoman. How are we to identify or verify that that is a policeman or policewoman?
That is actually a great point that you touched on, because these are the things that, the gaps that we see. No pun intended, these are the gaps, and then people take it for granted, and it's come like, okay, are we really equal, or are we really fighting for equity, diversity, and inclusion throughout the different aspects? Now, that this leads to my next question, right? In terms of going into a police station, or let's say the fire service unit, or even the prisons, right? Through the Trinidad and Tobago Blind Welfare Association, was there any like intermediary intervention to say, okay, can we do something to support you, to equip you to deal with persons who are blind and welfare? And how, if so, how did they take that? Were they responsive?
So yes, they have been, or in fact, we have a person who is blind, a client of the association who is a present active prison officer with the Trinidad and Tobago Prison Services. But obviously they don't work in the remand section or anything like that. They work in a different aspect where they were redeployed. And the Trinidad and Tobago Fire Services have been a partner of the Trinidad and Tobago Blind Welfare Association, have been supporting us for a number of years. So they are, if you ask me about guiding a person who is blind or guiding someone in an event or understanding how to interact with a person who's blind, yes, they are aware of that. But let's say that it's an emergency because they are the protective arm, they are the protective services, and they come to us. in a state of emergency or a state of crisis, I'm not sure how much training they have in how to interact with a person who's blind, because they may come with the same approach in the same kind way, and you're in a crisis state. You can't, it's a whole different approach. And to say we have had a formal training, or we have been asking to be part of the training program with these protective services when they undergo training, so that we could present to them how to deal and interact both in a civil manner and in a manner of crisis. That is yet to come true. That's yet to be part of the training. And I must say, the what you call the SRPs did reach out to us, and they did invite us to be part of their training program, and we were part of the training program. But I mean, that's like a one-off thing for one batch of SRPs. We're looking at this must be a built-in training for all the protective services on how you interact with a person who is blind when executing your duties. And Shamla, if I may just quickly say, there is solutions existing around the world, and there have been examples where persons who are blind are able to communicate and validate that these are police officers who are visiting you or in front of you or in your home or in your space. There's examples where in other parts of the world, secret codes are given to the person you visited. So when the officer comes, they say the code and you verify the code, and then you know that it is the person. Technology has reached so far, Shamla, that everybody has smartphones and cameras on their phone now. We have so much voluntary apps all around the world. We have people who could call, neighbors, friends, that if officers just give a 2 or 3 seconds for us to validate by calling our phone, getting a video conference call on, so somebody can validate, yes, that is as a person in a police uniform. But again, impersonation is there. At least it gives some level of security or some level of ease by the person who's blind that they're actually speaking to a police officer or somebody who claims to be a police officer.
You actually answered my question. Yeah, you actually answered my question, my upcoming question, because I was going to say, what are some quick fixes that can be done immediately without, having to put in too much resources? That, let's say, somebody who is a victim of abuse, right? A blind person who is a victim of abuse, how do they, through that process, how do they walk in and get that attention? What, besides, technology, as we say, what are some immediate wins that they could do, quick fixes that they could do to, bridge that gap, communication gap, or even validation gap between the protective services and persons who are blind and visually impaired? Because obviously you want to be protected not only in terms of, I guess, in general, but in terms of secrecy and confidentiality. Yeah.
So I raised a question, as I said in the past, of an officer who was actually a assistant senior superintendent of police. I'm not going to call any names or anything, but this person, I asked him, I said, what about somebody come to kidnap a person who's blind, to hold the family at ransom? And they come and say they are a police officer and they take me away. When I'm going to realize that this is not a police officer, when I am not in a police station, so the time it takes when they tell me come, I need to go with them to the point when I realize that I am not in a police station, I am in some shack or some house tie up somewhere. That is when I will know that I am not interacting with the police. It's not feasible. It's not, that type of policing needs to change, and we need to correct it, because if, according to you, Shamla, according to the world, if you want to be diverse, if you want to be equitable and inclusive, we need to change the way in which we interact with the protective services. Secondly, when it comes to witness, there's this whole thing, and it's a whole different discussion, Shamla, that deals with evidence collection and witness. A person who is blind, the first thing they ask you, how can you identify the person? There's so many other ways now in the world that evidence can be collected on matters concerning persons who are blind. I mean, it is a whole 2-3 hours discussion we could have on this. I just touched the surface here to highlight there are ways to get it done, and there are challenges with the police service. We have had clients who complain that they go into the police, they made reports of rape and stuff like that, and then they are told Could you identify the person? How you know is that person? And that whole matter gets thrown out, and the person gets no justice in the process. So it is a serious matter. It is an excellent topic you are raising, and I look forward to when the protective services engage the Trinidad and Tobago Blind Welfare Association to have this discussion in a very formal and positive way.
To close off, right? What advice, although, this entire thing is like pitching to say these are the gaps, but how would you say, what advice would you say in terms of approaching the Trinidad and Tobago blind welfare and even in general to start opening the minds and raising awareness, and including what advice would you give? And also, how can persons reach out to the Trinidad and Tobago Blind Welfare Association?
Well, firstly, you can reach out to the Trinidad and Tobago Blind Welfare Association through our WhatsApp number. It's 395-3086. You can reach out through that number. You could call us or you could WhatsApp us. I just want to give one number, 395-3086. And if you know someone who is blind or visually impaired, if you know a child who is blind or visually impaired, anyone at all who requires some assistance, reach out to us and we will make every effort to try and assist you. Advice for the police service or protective services, start with your training. We have training. Every single officer in the protective services go through some level of training, and they need to start including how to interact with persons who are blind, both in a civil manner and in a crisis mode in their training. They need to include that. And if they start with the training, at some point in the future, all the officers in the police service, in the army, in the TT, Transmigratory Fire Services, wherever they may be, prison services, would be able to interact, would understand how to deal with it, and start including in their policies and their procedures how to interact with persons who are blind, how to identify yourself with persons who are blind, because that's the only way to correct it.
Awesome. So, Mr. Lakans, we are out of time, but this was indeed an eye-opener, and I will carry forward some of these suggestions when I have the persons from the protective services on my segment. So thank you so much. And guys,
you're very welcome.
My pleasure. Guys, with that being said, I want to say thank you so much for tuning in to this week's segment of Unique Not Different. As I always say, until next week, be good, do good. Bye, everyone.